I'm Bailey Kobe from Double Entente. We're a small production company. It's a bit boutique. We specialize in the luxury area with clients such as Louis Vuitton, Dior, BMW, Mercedes. We're often looked at as the ones to also work with sort of really high-profile celebrities like Zendaya, Kanye West, Travis Scott, for example.
I'm Mariah Owen. I'm an actor and filmmaker. I started my production company, GTE Productions, when I was 21. I produce primarily narrative content for TV, film, digital media, do some music videos and festivals and commercial content as well. I love movies. I want to make movies for the rest of my life, and I'm so grateful to be here today, and I can't wait to get back to work.
Hi, I'm Jennifer Weberly. I run Metamorphic Productions, which is a creative content company. For about 15 years now, we've made everything from low-budget feature films to graphic novels. And I've also been a tech specialist in the same area of entertainment, independent artists, and small film production companies for 15 years as well.
I'm Chris Edgar. I'm an attorney. I used to work at a big Wall Street law firm, but now I have my own solo practice that focuses on intellectual property, entertainment, and just general commercial litigation issues. I'm also a film producer and composer, and I've worked on a bunch of features and shorts and digital series and so forth.
Just kind of in general, because I know a lot of people on here, they may already have production companies, but for the people who really want to start a production company, but have no idea where to begin, they have fears, they have concerns. Can you talk to us, Bailey or Mariah, let's do with whoever has the first one wants to speak. What were your concerns or fears when you were moving in, when you decided, I'm going to do this?
It was excitement. I think it's a great time for a filmmaker. When you're at that point where you say, I can make a company, I need to make a company, really, because either the business, warrants that, whether that's a production. For us, it was a movie. We're like, okay, great. We're going to go into production. You have to create that single purpose entity, which I think Chris will talk more about. And, so in terms of like the precipice, it's like, yeah, it's great to be able to do that. So I'm excited to try and, take people along what we did and sort of field the questions about, where to go essentially as you start out, because it is an exciting time. Right?
Totally. I think for me, starting a production company really came out of a necessity. I wanted to work with union actors. I wanted to work with bigger budgets, and I had to be incorporated in order to do so. So to kind of jump through the hoops that were required to make my films and make the projects I wanted to make, I had to become incorporated in order to level up in my career. So
to work with other people. That was the thing. It's like to work with other great people. You needed this entity in which to connect you all together, legally, taxation-wise, etc.
Exactly.
What happened when you first, for me, I formed a production company because I had clients already coming in. I'm assuming that's sort of where you guys were. Like, it just started to get serious enough that you had to form some kind of entity. But how do you keep clients coming in? How do you level up your clients? Because I know that you guys are working all the time.
Right. I think for me, I really started in narrative, and that's where my love and my heart is. But in the last couple of years, really branching out to get those commercial clients who seem to be my returning clients or clientele, if you will. And I think by going out, making those connections and meaningful connections, not just like trading business cards with someone, but, having a conversation. What do you like? What do I like? Can we find a way to work together? That's really been the way for me to find those clients. And even my fellow filmmakers, I think Leah McKendrick's on here, who we all know. Leah and I have consistently worked together again and again because we have a relationship and we work really well together. And I think that's been the most important factor in terms of building a client base and keeping it. And I don't really want to say clients, more like collaborators, I think is a better word for it. But also going out and, finding those people you want to work with. Is there a director you really like or a writer you really like? Well, then find their email and reach out and see if you can make that connection to start chatting.
Bailey, how do you get these really big name clients it seems like people come to you? How are they finding you?
It is weird. We exist in a very bizarre sort of cacophony of personal networks. And as Mariah says, it is all about relationships. And for us, it's been work. It's like, the thing we do is the thing that people see. And then people say, oh, well, that's great. And then, so, then this client will call. And so it sort of propagates itself within, as crappy as that is to say, within sort of word of mouth. Honestly, it's like, exactly. Like, and so it's just like, You know, my first music video was a #1 hit in France. And it was just like, that was a thing that people were like, oh, hey, that was really good. Then Louis Vuitton called and said, hey, the things you're doing for those, you're doing for Universal, can you do for us? And so it kind of propagates itself, the work. For me, it's all about the work.
So a lot of it then is just luck. I mean, being ready, being
Absolutely.
good at what you do, but
super crazy
having
luck.
that first lucky. I hate whenever I'm doing these panels and that's the answer I have to give them. I'm like, I know there's no like magic book that tells you.
I think there is a little bit of a magic trick, if you will, because your work was awesome, but also your work ethic. And I think that speaks for itself. So people see that project and then they either, meet the people behind it. Like they met Bailey and they were like, oh my gosh, this dude is awesome. I want to work with him as well, because it's your work that's, kind of catches people's eye. But I think it's how you work with people that continues that opportunity to work.
Yeah, they want to see if you're crazy or not too. Like they'll like your work, but then they'll want to meet you. They'll want to meet you and be like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He has a point of view, or this girl has a point of view and a vision and a love and a passion for what they're doing. Right. I think they can bring that to my project.
I think for me, so Chris and I, we do Heart on Fire productions together. And we've had those lucky moments where something drops in our lap. Like I've had Billy Ray Cyrus drop in my lap. And then I've tried to claw and scratch to get projects and I can't land them. I've made, like even with Bailey has called me and like, can you put a pitch together? Because we want to see if we can get you to be the director for this project. And you put all this work into it and then it goes, sorry, we're going with our buddies.
Project too.
Yeah, it keeps, but I think it's something we all deal with. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, can we give them, and Jennifer and Chris, of course, speak up. Is there something we can give to all of us? That's like, look, I cold reached out to this person who I didn't know and it worked. And here's what I did. Does anybody have a story like that?
I do, in terms of a couple different projects. I mean, how I really started even working with Leah, or how I'm on this panel today. Leah cold emailed me, and it was literally an email, went to my Hotmail account. I don't have a Hotmail account anymore, but I just really incorporated my production company and emailed me and said, hey, I'm a female filmmaker. If you're looking for a film, choose mine. This is what it's about.
Aww.
It was MFA, a vigilante thriller about campus rape. And, that kind of started a journey for me and solidified to me that a cold email really can work. But I think when you're doing that, you have to make sure that you have an idea that is so, I don't say extraordinary, but it's something that, catches people's eyes. It's well thought out. I think the power of a cold email is amazing, but finding that way to connect with the person on the other end of it is, imperative.
And I would say now to those of you watching that now is such a great time to try to connect with people that you've been wanting to connect with, because especially in like the sort of industry sector where nobody, like a lot of people aren't working. So they have the time to reply to you. They're not overly, overwhelmed like normal. Okay. If throughout the thing you guys think of any wonderful, remarkable client stories you're forgetting, bring them up, because I think that's really the crux of feeling like you feel good enough to start and keep a production company, is keeping money in your pocket. In the meantime, I would love to hear about one of your biggest or most exciting clients, something that was like, I cannot believe this is happening moment. He slow sip the tea.
Well, I've been fortunate enough to have like just insane experiences in this industry. But I think just working with Kanye West kind of took me aback, because you don't know what to expect. And so you go in there and you try and do all the due diligence. You make sure everything is perfect. You make sure that, that green room experience is perfect. Their experience, as soon as that driver comes and drops them outside of your location, that experience that star is going to have, and which is why I think people look at us as people who know how to take care of stars, is A+. And it's not about throwing money, but it's about thinking about what they need in order to, execute for the day. And, doing your due diligence and working really hard to provide that experience so that the artist can perform, and then they perform. That's the crazy part for me. When Kanye I was like, it was a concert of 1-to-1. It was just like, I just everything else zoned out. Like we had like hundreds of extras, but like, it was just like, Kanye's singing to me. This is weird. And he's not yelling at me, and he's appreciating, sort of the things that we've been doing. And so, I think, when it comes to, and it just speaks to intimidation when you get to that sort of quote unquote next level of client, when you're working for a bigger client that may intimidate you. you know, you just kind of rely on the thing that got you there, which is the hard work, the work that you've done before. They brought you on for a reason. And, you know, it's just about maintaining that work ethic of delivering what it is that you do.
I love that.
Oh, well, I was going to ask you, how did you get was the Kanye thing for your production company? Your production company had that gig. How did you get Kanye? You remember?
Yeah, we had done some work for Dior, and you know, he was connected to Balmain, which is another luxury company, and it was just kind of a reach out thing where he was just like, you know, he had his people reach out, and he was doing. There was like one more video that him and Big Sean wanted to do, and it was a music video called "All Your Fault." And, you know, Big Sean's album, you know, Emmy nominated it was massive. You know, it's such I assumed was going to win that year. And I know Kanye wasn't happy, but you know, it was just one more video that they wanted to do on that album that was close and personal. And they wanted sort of the intimacy and I think the immediacy that we provide in terms of the filming experience. And it's obvious when you look at our work. And so, they just reached out and, you know, and said, this is something you can do. Obviously, you know, when you're dealing with instances like that, when you have a sort of an A-lister, there's always almost the expectation that you're going to have to be giving up a lot. You know, it's just like, okay, I know my fee is going to disappear into, you know, the cost of extras or something like that. Something that you always have to kind of trade off. But I will say I was super surprised. Everything came in and we didn't have to give up much. And I think the expectation is to just deliver well for the artist.
Did you have to pitch yourself for the project, make a deck and all that, or it was just one of those nice little, nope, you're it? That's great.
Yeah, it's like when you're doing, you know, pitches, it's more for, you know, commercial work and you know, it's maybe something outside of your wheelhouse that you have to show. A lot of times, you know, it just kind of comes in, and that's, you know, from the directorial side, from the producing side and the production company side. You know, you're trying to foster the director. You know, we work with a handful of directors, and it's about supporting them in the process of making sure that their vision is clear, whether that's talking on a Zoom chat, talking on the phone, talking, you know, or sending that deck. You know, how good does that deck express what it is that we want to do for that artist or that client?
I guess the final follow-up question on that whole thing or statement is, I think that especially in the music business, if those of you who are listening to the panel who are really looking to be part of the music world, which maybe just run, there's not as much money as you think there might be. But I do find that those projects fall in your lap. Like, they're not as complicated to get. It is about fostering relationships and sort of having the good work. But I mean, we got Billy Ray's video without the manager even seeing our work. It was just, we were there and we were nice. So you guys do it.
But don't discount that. I think the music industry is a very powerful tool, especially for a young creator, because they have an audience. Billy Ray Cyrus, can you imagine all of Billy Ray Cyrus's fans saw your video?
Yeah.
And that's what happened to us. It was just like all the fans of
I'm not saying
artist.
Yeah, for sure. And it's fun. It's especially making music videos, because it's this whole just freedom, usually a narrative, and it's less like commercials are tougher and there's a lot more people involved. Mariah, did you have any final thoughts on that before I move on to the?
I think the biggest thing for me when I kind of made the transition from, I mean, I'm still doing both, but from indie filmmaking to commercials and working with bigger brands and people that I admire and, you know, have been a fan of, I think was keeping the mentality of still being an indie film producer. And that's really, really helped me about going the extra mile. You know, kind of how Bailey was saying about making those certain sacrifices, or the ones that you think you'll make, but kind of keeping that attitude of, okay, I'll do whatever it takes to get this made, and bringing that to the commercial world has really helped making those connections with corporate clients as well.
Time for Jennifer and Chris to get involved here. And of course, Mariah and Bailey, speak up with your experience, but a lot of people want to know how to choose their incorporation, or should they even get incorporated? And then if they do, is it S Corp, is it LLC? Jennifer, what do you normally tell people? How do you usually break that down for people?
I actually usually tell them to consult a lawyer first. Because it depends on what they're doing. In terms of entities on the tax side, the biggest mistake I see coming this way is that if it's for one project, if your production company is for one project, it inevitably ends up that people come to me when they want to do their taxes, which is already after they've shot a film or a project. They've got investors, and they're either a single member LLC but they have investors with agreements stating that those investors will get K-1s and those kinds of things. So then they're not really a single member LLC anymore on the tax side, because you've got to have the investors on the company and involved in K-1s and all these other things, unless it's a loan. So that's the biggest mistake I see on this side, is I've got single member LLCs because they wanted all the creative to themselves, which I completely understand, but then they ended up with investors. And so if you want to open a production company to do what you guys are actually talking about, that's different. And that can be a couple of different ways as well, depending on if you have investors or you don't. And so that's why I say talk to a lawyer, to tell a lawyer what you want in terms of protection of liability and things like that before you come over to the accounting side, because it really depends on what your goal is with your production company.
So most people, when they do a feature film, they definitely, I've seen the question that keeps coming up, what's the best entity for a feature film? That usually people do an LLC for just your feature film. But as far as a production company, can you talk to us, Chris as well, but Jennifer, I'm really thinking more of a tax thing. Like for instance, I'm trying to decide, if I'm the only person who's the owner of this production company, should I be an S Corp because am I going to get better tax write-offs, or should I be an LLC because the paperwork's easier? Does it really matter for taxes?
So for that specific question, it does matter, but the main difference between an LLC and an S Corp in terms of entity on our side is actually not very much, because an LLC can elect to be treated by the IRS and the California or whatever state you're in as an S Corp. So an LLC does not exist in the eyes of the federal government in terms of taxes. An LLC has to choose between being treated as a partnership and an S Corp. And there really is no choice there, because an S Corp is going to be better for you in the long run on the tax side.
And can you get into that more? Like, why is the S Corp better in the long run?
In terms of a production company for you, because I'm sorry, I know I keep saying it depends. It depends on how much money you're planning on making. So an LLC and an S Corp are taxed differently in the state of California. One is taxed based on its gross, which is the LLC, as opposed to an S Corp, which is taxed on its net. So that's that. If you're going to stay in the $250,000 range and it's a loan out company situation just for you, then an S Corp is going to tend to be better. But the trick with an S Corp is the IRS requires you to pay yourself a salary. So you can have some tax benefits by doing that. But I mean, you definitely need to get an accountant involved at that point, because you need to be doing payroll tax returns for yourself every quarter. But then you have to do that from the government's perspective, because the other thing is the S Corp's profits are not taxed to you under self-employment, and an LLC coming through as would you end up with that profit directly in your personal tax return, and you get self-employment. So self-employment is designed by the government to protect you in some ways, because you're paying into Medicare and Social Security. So if you don't have self-employment, then you're not. And certainly the other benefit in this particular moment in time is if you have an S Corp and you're paying yourself a reasonable salary, then you can also, you're eligible for unemployment, even claiming against yourself.
Oh, that's a smart, because I have a real issue where I couldn't, and most people I know could not claim unemployment. Thankfully, California kind of helped us out there afterwards. But, and then as far as, I had a question in there somewhere. This is all such great information. And
actually, if I could add one thing.
Yes, please.
And just to be clear, right now we're talking about a company, a sort of an umbrella production company, when we're talking about forming S Corp or an LLC, as opposed to what Bailey referred to earlier, which is an LLC devoted to a single movie. Like if you were making the Fast and the Furious Part 26, you have the Fast and the Furious 26 LLC, but you could also have Heart on Fire Productions that is the managing member of that company.
Right. Well, then like Mariah, you could probably speak to this too, as far as Jennifer as well, because you guys do a lot of feature films. So we would have Heart on Fire Productions, say S Corp, and then when we do Playing with Beethoven, it's its own LLC. So, but here's a question for you. Is it true that as an LLC or S Corp that you don't have to pay the $800 the first year of for FTB?
As an S Corp, you are exempt for the first year.
So that's another, I guess, benefit of going S Corp over LLC then. Or can you also do that as an LLC?
You can also do that as an LLC. Because if you elect as an LLC to be an S Corp in the eyes of the government, then they're going to treat you that way.
So
makes
now
sense.
I'm a production company. It's just me that's getting paid the salary. I've decided to go S Corp. I'm paying myself regularly, but now I need to hire Chris to compose some music. So can he still be a 1099 employee? And I'm sure a lot of people watching want to know.
You're going down the AB5 route?
Yes, I am.
No, he cannot. The simple, now they're fighting this right now. So and this has been going on. So the simple answer is no. Right now, in the eyes of California, anybody who is controlled by the production company, and music's a little trickier, post-production's a little bit trickier, and they might be able to get away with it, but production for sure, crew cannot be, because you have a call sheet. Anybody on the call sheet is considered controlled right now in terms of showing up, and therefore is an employee. The other benefits of this are that typically, I am an independent filmmaker and I have done this myself. The 1099 situation obviously is cheaper for the production company and the film or the project. You don't have to pay payroll taxes, and you're typically not paying workers' comp. You're definitely not paying unemployment for the crew typically, because SAG requires it. So if you've got SAG, then you're already paying them. So the dangerous thing about that is that this law is not actually as new as it sounds. It just made one big major change this year, and I'll talk about that in a second. But your crew has not been covered if you're not W-2ing them by workers' comp and things like that. And if those people are harmed, there is a possibility that they can, especially if it's big, that is a huge liability for other reasons other than just taxes and saving money. So the major difference that California stated in January of this year was that until proven otherwise, a person is an employee now.
Okay.
And that's the ABC test. They are saying if you are hiring someone that you control and they're working for you, that is in the normal course of your business, they are an employee. So if you hire, I mean, literally it says craft service is an employee, but catering is not. You can hire a company as a 1099 for catering. The other thing they're really fighting right now is a company-to-company situation. Like last year, if I hire you, Jen, and you've got your loan out company and it's company, that used to be like, cool, you're 1099. Right now, that is also not the case. A company-to-company situation does not automatically make you not an employee. So it's a bit drastic. But I will say that the unions came together with the state of California last summer and in the fall and literally wrote a letter, and SAG and Directors Guild, IATSE, all of them said, oh, this will not affect our industry. Don't worry about it. But it is.
It's pretty bad. So
yeah.
basically then as my production company, I can hire, I can't hire a DP unless he's an employee, but I could hire someone to come clean my studio as a 1099.
Yes, if they're a company. Because they're outside the regular work. The only other two people that are kind of getting away with it are writers and producers right now are on the exemption list, because technically they wouldn't be on a call sheet. So technically you're not controlling them except for deadline, which is why post-production might slip through too. Like that's a good way to, and I would talk to a lawyer or a tax person first, but that could be a good way to get around these on our small projects where it's like, just hire everybody as a producer. And I will say right now that everything that I'm saying on this panel is not considered legal tax advice.
I mean, the thing is that there is I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
There is this business-to-business exception within AB5, but the problem is that because this law was just enacted in January, there hasn't been much entertainment-related litigation, and so we still need to have a fulsome understanding of what this business-to-business exception really covers.
Yeah, okay. That's a good way to put it.
Okay, so moving back to everybody starting their production company, you've decided if you're S Corp LLC, you're ready to set up. Did any of you bring in capital to your company to start? Did you bring in investors, financiers, or did you just went off clients, kept it small until you built yourself up?
I started with a little bit of capital that I had built from a previous company that I had. But I think a really big point that I want to mention for that conversation, which had so many awesome points, even I'm learning, which I love. But, really getting back to the why you're starting a production company, it's a lot of work. It's, a lot of time, a lot of paperwork, so much responsibility, and just really remembering what type of content you want to produce as well. I was just kind of reading the chat box, which I know we're not supposed to look at yet, but it's really important. If you're an independent filmmaker, remember why you're getting into this, and that there's a lot of work involved, and it's not something that you can just set up in a day and it's going to run itself. Really thinking it through of wanting to make sure, do I have another job in the meantime that can help support my production company until I'm ready to do it full time. So for me, I was, knowing I wanted to create more content and to have a production company. So I started saving up a little bit of capital to be able to build my first, or to fund some of my first projects, and kind of invest in myself. I didn't go to film school, so I kind of looked at it as the investment I put in my company is almost the tuition I would have put in for a
smart
film.
Yeah, it's really smart. And then you end up with more work and contacts after, instead of a lot of debt, for sure. I think a lot of people are so for most people I know who've done a production company, as far as the capital, do you raise capital question, is a lot of us have just started small. We were like, I'm going to form an LLC so that I can hire people and I can take on projects or whatever, which you actually can do as just a DBA as well. But then, so for you to want to bring in capital, it's such a risk. So I guess the question would be, why would anybody want to bring in capital? Do you guys have an answer for that?
I think it's really important, and I'm sure Bailey can definitely speak to this as well. Make sure you do some producing work prior to starting a production company. I have a lot of people that I know in my life who I love dearly, but they're actors who aren't working at the moment. And so they started a production company because they thought it would be easy, and it's not. And so I think, making sure you have some credits prior to starting your production company so that you have a track record, a proven track record of being able to put in the work, either, as an on the ground, on set producer, or, pulling in that financing. Go work for somebody else for a little bit, learn what to do, or honestly, what not to do, and take that and build your company in a way that, is so uniquely you. But I'd love to hear what Bailey has to say too, because you've worked with some huge clients.
Let me ask Grace Yu's question, because I think it's the same. It might help us answer the question I just asked a little more. So Grace Yu says, what sort of function would your own production company serve if you are a filmmaker starting out in indie movies, not necessarily looking to make a lot of movies or making a lot of money or looking to do many commercials? I mean, is that, in my mind, you don't even really need to start a production company, just go make your movies.
Well, I think, Bailey, you go.
No, go ahead, please.
Thanks. I think the biggest thing is, do you want to help other people tell their stories? So with your first project, I would definitely build it in-house if you think that you want to have a production company that people hear the name and they associate with great work, or a type of work, whether you're in genre or whatever. So I think it's really important to, if you want to be a producer and have a production company and work on projects that just, that aren't just your own, it's really important to do that.
Yeah, I'd like to share the question actually with Jennifer and Chris, because there's elements to this that speak to the growth, and when you do sort of, okay, so I want to do a feature, because we do features as well. We do a feature every summer or two, and that's when we bring on the investors. That's when we create another separate company. We bring in the investors and we say, okay, we're going to work on this thing together, guys. We do that because risk limitations. It's something that I see Jennifer smiling. There's reasons for it. And I'd actually like to ask Jennifer, what is it that you're advising, your clients from the investor side about investing in films?
My clients from the investor side? You're saying, yeah. Do I have investors? I don't have investors as clients, actually. Gotcha. I specialize on the other side, on the filmmaker side, actually. And again, what I get asked a lot if I should open an LLC now, or I should do this or that. If you are a producer, that's one thing. I have a lot of actors, actually, and a couple of writers who ask me when they should open a company. I think there are, again, several answers to that question. I think that if you are not making enough money independently outside the W-2 world, I don't see a reason for an independent artist to do that until they're making enough that they can have tax benefits for if you have a lot of 1099 income, you're going to pay a lot of taxes. So if you
is there a number for that?
You can.
Is there a number that you say?
It's usually around 100,000.
Okay.
That's about $100,000.
Okay.
If you're up in the 100,000 range, because you are going to have to pay yourself, right? And if you're going to pay yourself, you're going to pay taxes not only on yourself. Everybody's seen a paycheck. You know, you have Medicare, Social Security, and withholding withheld. What people don't understand when they have a company is the company also matches Social Security and Medicare withholding. So there's a lot of math to figure out when it becomes the perfect time. It's usually around 100 grand.
That's good to know.
That's just for independence, right? I have a lot of writers who get 1099s and that kind of stuff. I can't speak to the exactly to the legal side of what an LLC would benefit an independent artist. In terms of producing, as I said earlier, I find the biggest mistake is that people open up this company, they want to have a brand, and they do all this work, and they don't actually talk to a lawyer or an accountant, especially until a year later. I've had people come to me with 2 different films in there with 6 investors. The investors are on different sides. That's very complicated on the tax side to do that. So I hear you guys are more experienced. So you're obviously taking your brand and then you're making it a manager of the company. That's a good idea. Unless any of you are being taxed as a partnership right now. If you're filing 1065s, that's actually become a red flag in the IRS in the last 5 years. So if you've got a partnership running other partnerships or a partnership in a manager position, we are actually, as tax preparers, we actually have to note that, and the IRS is flagging that, just for your information.
So it sounds like the answer to all of this is talk to your lawyer and your tax specialist before you do anything.
And I'll just add one thing, which is that one purpose of having an entity that's separate from yourself is to protect your personal assets. Mm-hmm. So if you were to just do business as a film producer under a DBA, which is not in itself a legal entity, then theoretically, if somebody sued you, for some claim arising out of the film, they could get at your personal money. And what you want to do is restrict them to the capital of the LLC. So have the LLC be the entity that enters into the contracts rather than you.
I love it. And Chris, while we've got you here, is there another part to that where if people do want to bring in financiers or partners into their LLC, is there some, I know it's deeper and it would be a whole conversation, but is there like a sort of top level piece of advice to give people?
Well, yeah. Well, like we've been saying, talk to your lawyers and accountants.
Careful.
Yeah. Well, film finance. Yeah. And I'll say there are people who have come to me with documents that they've tried to prepare, like private placement memoranda and subscription agreements. That is, agreements under which people purchase units in an LLC in return for cash, the way that people typically invest in a film. And they say, hey, could you take a look at this? And I just look at it and say, oh my goodness.
So you don't want me to go to Google to make my own doc first, is what you're saying.
So that's a key point. I mean, generally speaking, when it comes to all types of contract, you may think that you're saving on legal fees and costs by doing law by Google, but in fact, you're not, because if someone finds an ambiguity in that agreement later, like one of your investors or partners decides they want more money, and this is in the high quality problem situation where your film does make money, then that ambiguity may come back to bite you, and you may end up in litigation, which will end up costing you far more in legal fees than it would have to have a decent attorney look at the agreements in the first place.
Also, everybody who's watching, because Chris is my partner and I get to, basically abuse him for my legal needs. He's really good at this stuff. And right now he's like still excited about it. So he wouldn't charge you as much as a normal entertainment lawyer. So get him now, because probably in a year, he's going to be like, I'm not even doing this anymore. Fuck it. Okay. We're getting close. We're at 1:40. I want to get to our audience. So really quick, can you guys talk just a little bit about how you're staying afloat, if you are, during this weird quarantine time?
I think for me right now, I'm following up on a lot of projects that have kind of been on the back burner, other like personal projects of mine, and in terms of staying afloat, really working on development, so that our projects that are in development or pre-production, especially for our TV or digital media projects, making sure that everything is as good as it possibly can be, so that as soon as we're allowed to film, and a lot of my projects are filming in Canada, and we're not allowed to film until August. So really trying to find ways to stay afloat, pitch those projects so that we can get into development, get some money to kind of start attaching people and packaging. That's been a huge thing. And also kind of exploring the new opportunities of creating content within the confines that we're all experiencing of being in our home. So reaching out to new clients as well has been a huge, huge thing, making those connections. Yeah.
I know, Jennifer, you've been busy helping people file unemployment. What else?
Yes, for everyone listening who is an independent, California is offering you, it's not a lot, but it is something. It's $167 a week plus 600. So if you have no work at all, I highly recommend you do it. Be patient and nice to them. They are well overwhelmed, but it is working. My clients are receiving unemployment. I actually have my clients right now have I've been helping them with taxes, obviously, as well, and some of their accounting, depending on the films and personal, but I've also been delaying my charges, so I'm actually eligible for unemployment. But our content creation company, which does do a lot of different things, is doing similar stuff. We're pitching for development and trying to pull in, we've got a graphic novel going out of Korea, stuff like that, in international waters so that it's not necessarily right here. So just keep working. I mean, It's been good that way.
Bailey, is there anything your production companies, are you able to do anything right now? Is everything on hold?
Well, I think we're, as creators, we're unstoppable. Nothing's going to really stop us. I think the only thing that's been taken away from us is being on set together. And that's a crucial point, obviously. But the development, we're only on set, honestly. There's a very finite time. The rest of the year, we're in development, we're in post-production. And so we've been very lucky that we've kind of sort of built up a bank, and now we're just doing post-production on a couple of our projects. And then, going into development on the next ones, trying to load up the chambers so that we're hitting the ground running, which is coming soon. The more conversations I'm having, I know California obviously is really pushing hard, but it's coming really soon. And I think the industry, it's sort of the levels that you need: insurance, film permits, etc. They're gearing up. They're trying to understand what they need to do in order to make a safe shoot, and work with production companies, give them guidelines in order to make that one piece come back to us.
One of our questions was, what type of insurance should an umbrella production company have? Do they cover pandemics? I think the pandemic, like you just said, they're still trying to figure out if that's going to be something you can pay for. Like right now, you have to opt out of having terrorist coverage after 9/11. You have to actually buy a terrorist package if you want it. Umbrella production insurance. I have it. I've had it for years now, whether we have 2 projects or 100 projects. Mm-hmm. What do you guys, is there just a basic general rule of advice you go by? I just get the bare minimum, what we need, and it's been fine. You can rent your gear, you can.
Yeah, we have general liability with an entertainment package on it for low budget filmmaking. We pay it every year.
And it's the cheapest for your general liability plus your workers' comp. It's around $5,000 a year. So you really got to kind of commit that you're going to do this. And then what I do is I always make sure there's a line item for insurance. So if we have a client, they're actually paying for insurance. So it's kind of helping bring that back. Do you guys do that as well?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, it's a great strategy to start small, get, a basic package, work with a great quality company. And that's what we got lucky. We started with DeWitt Stern, which is a great company. They do us and up to the Oscars, but they're not much more expensive. They're just very sophisticated in how they can tweak your policy. So you can start in with the bare minimum and say, hey, this is what I'm expecting. I'm expecting to do this many projects, or I'm expecting to do a movie, etc. And then once you get to it, because you're going to get to a location, this can be like, I want $5 million minimum, right? I need $5 million for even put sticks on my property. And so then you can go back to a quality company and say, hey, I need to tweak that. And they'll say, okay, they can make that thing for you. And then you can pass that cost onto your clients and be like, okay, great. We want this. It's going to be another, $800, etc.
Right.
So it does behoove you to get the package as soon as you get that timing of that first job of the year. So you're just like, okay, so January, okay, we're booked. Oh, fantastic. Call if you have a great broker and a great company and a great relationship. And it's something that we've been talking a lot about, relationships, having great relationships with somebody like Jennifer, somebody like Chris, etc. You can call on them to help advise, the process. And so the same is with insurance. We have an insurance advisor who's like, okay, great. This is what you guys are going to have to do for this. Oh, you want to do a stunt? Okay, hold on. Let's talk.
And actually, I have a question for you guys. Have any of you had any credits or extensions to your insurance policies? I know my car insurance is doing that, but have any of you had that for entertainment insurance?
I actually emailed my production company and an insurance company and asked for the production insurance and said, hey, car companies are doing this. Like none of us can use none of our insurance. We can't even use it. So basically I'm wasting, 3 months, whatever, how long this goes on. Mm-hmm. And they're basically like, sorry for you.
Yeah.
It's a sorry for you, because what they want to do, to be frank, is they want to change that contract, because the contract that you have right now, if we all have it, that doesn't say anything about COVID.
Right.
COVID, there's no exclusion. They want to get you to your extension, and then they're going to change that contract to include the COVID exclusion, and then go as business as usual.
It's so frustrating.
I think a little point, Jen, just before, for some of the indie filmmakers who are watching as well, depending on the size of your production company as well, you might kind of max out for your COI. So for my last project, Pamela and Ivy, Jen actually helped us out with our insurance as well. We needed additional insurance, and that's also an opportunity, again, going back to relationships, the size of your production company, and reaching out if you need additional insurance for those purposes. And that's a possibility as well.
So quick question from Cam Mitchell. Hey, Cam, are any of your companies rep by an agent or agency? What does that process look like if you are? Is it important to move on to bigger projects to have rep?
I'm not, my company isn't repped by an agency. I am in terms of literary work and for my producing personally, but I didn't want to put my company with an agency yet, just because I really loved the opportunity of kind of going out and finding those projects and still having that independent feel and the flexibility and freedom.
Yeah. I know people who are repped by companies as a creative duo and such, which I guess would be their little production company, but I honestly, I've never even thought about it. Like, I think our mindset is so in the hustle mentality that we don't ever go, oh, somebody might be able to help me.
Right. Well, I think it also goes to, like, you're as a producer, or, and any of us on the panel right now, we ultimately love stories. We're storytellers. So I think that's a huge thing for me. It's almost a little bit of defiance. Like, I want to be able to pick the projects that I'm doing. And I want to have that freedom to kind of build my career in that regard, and not kind of just go through the motions, I think.
This may have been answered, but I want to just make, Ross Martin says, I've had an LLC in the past for a film company. I'm looking to start a new business as a freelance writer, film copywriter. What would be the best ideal business setup? Sole proprietorship? Do we have a quick answer for that? Because it kind of goes back to your, I guess it's sort of that, are you making $100,000 in your year? If not, just do a DBA.
Yeah, from the tax side, that's how it would be. Yes, just be a DBA Schedule C on your personal tax return, which you'll have pass-through taxes of, but then you can write off all those deductions underneath whatever, there's a lot of entertainment ones. But if you get higher, then you can, or if you're dealing with a studio, sometimes the studio requests it. Actually, if they option something from you at a high level, they may request an entity. I have a writer that's happening to right now. So we were hustling, trying to put together her and her lawyer and I were trying to figure out how to put that together. But typically, if you're in a low ball, you can stay sole prop until you're making more money.
Andrew Fan, I think it's a quick answer, and I think the answer is no, but please, Jennifer will know for sure. If you're still working a normal W-2 job, can you still file for unemployment as a gig worker?
No.
That's what I figured. I have
if
friends.
you are now, but if you are W-2 and you're have been reduced in hours, you can attempt to do. There is a click on the unemployment that says my hours have been reduced due to COVID, so you might qualify for some. But if you're in your regular job, there's nothing for you. Sorry.
Okay, so. Sam Cleary, how does crowdfunding play a role in taxation and making an LLC? Chris or Jennifer, do one of you guys have an answer for that?
Crowdfunding, I highly recommend that if you are going to do a film and you're talking about more than $5,000, if you're actually going to raise $60,000 to $100,000 or more, make sure you do not do it on your social security number. You will be 1099 directly for that. You should have an entity in place to do that. Also be wary of crowdfunding is income on your tax return. It is not equity. It is not investment. It is income if it's coming into either your social security number or the FEIN. And so if you, for some reason, like this year, crowdfunded a bunch in January and then you cannot do production, you're going to run into some serious taxes on that crowd fund. So if you have $100,000 and you spent $5 of it, the government will see that as profit next year, and then you'll end up paying taxes. So crowdfunding is a very important thing. I've had a lot of mistakes in that area too, where people show up a year later and they're like, oh, we don't have any income. I'm like, no, you do actually, because crowdfunding is considered income.
I may be doing this wrong and you might just slap me, but I basically, because I'm the only, I've done my production company for a long time without an S Corp, but even when I had the S Corp, I just basically say any production fund. So if the company's giving me $50,000 to do a project, it doesn't matter if I spent the whole $50,000 on the project. That is my income. I just have to show where I spent the money. Am I doing that correctly, Jennifer?
You personally, so you've crowdfunded 50,000?
No, I mean, just like if a company, just in general, like if a company goes, here's 50 grand for your project or for the project we were hiring you to do.
Okay.
So especially when I'm not an S Corp, but even when I was, I basically, all that 50,000 becomes my income. And then I have to show all the receipts that I paid this person, and we rented this location.
That's correct.
So you have to keep record of everything. Which
absolutely.
Is the same thing as crowdfunding. It's like, well, if you spent the money on the film, then you have to show the receipts of where you spent that
That's
money.
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Great. So is it worth, this is a great one for documentary filmmakers, is it worth pursuing a B Corp or a 501c status if you're an umbrella production company for documentary films?
I do not do nonprofit tax returns because they are massive and difficult. I do not specialize in them. I've sent two other people for that.
Yeah.
Most of the time I would recommend getting fiscal sponsorship instead to get your 501c3 status. And depending on how you do it and how you work with them, like Fractured Atlas out of New York, you can actually work with them if you are actually going to be not-for-profit. So the biggest issue becomes if you then are for profit, because the government doesn't like that. The government doesn't like you running around saying you're not going to be for profit, you're taking donations, they're tax deductible, and then suddenly you sell it to Netflix and you've made a profit. So it's a complicated question.
Chris, you've done a lot of nonprofit stuff in the last month or two, or since December. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think, Jennifer's account of the tax consequences was great.
But as far as like making something nonprofit is a lot of paperwork, a lot of crossing I's, dotting T's, or the other way around. This is why Chris does the paperwork. So it's definitely, you got to really commit, and not only for the paperwork to get yourself started, but for every single dollar line item, you got to commit to it. But I guess it's worth it if you are really nonprofit.
In addition to tax returns, if you have a nonprofit in the state of California, you're also going to need to file forms that show assets and liabilities and discuss the purpose of the business and so forth. So yeah, there is a bunch of paperwork that's going to be involved, which, and if you're an entity that isn't that complex, isn't very difficult, like if it's something with assets below $25,000 or $50,000, I haven't found that to be too burdensome. But then again, I'm not doing the taxes of a nonprofit.
There is a short form if it's really small, but otherwise it's literally like a 20-page tax return with all these complicated lots and lots of every cent. And they make you prove it like quarterly or something. I don't know. I don't do it.
I have a couple questions that are sort of in the same realm. Tyler asked, what are your main concerns when you started your career in film? What are your fears? What made you keep going? Kate asking, any big mistakes that any of you made that you learned a good lesson from that could help somebody getting started? Which I think kind of the bottom line question is kind of that sort of, what's the one thing you wish you knew when you first started? Is there anything that comes to your guys' mind?
I think immediately for me, I was too worried I think as probably a lot of other indie filmmakers who are on this right now, it's too expensive. It's too expensive to get a good lawyer. It's too expensive to have, a proper accountant or to do my taxes or pay someone to do my taxes. And I think in the long run, just remembering why you're doing this, you're a producer. There are, people who do law, they are lawyers. Like, respect the fact that there are certain parameters and, find a way to make it work. There are people who want to work with you, and, it's almost ultimately more expensive to try and take the shortcut and cut corners just to save some type of money in the beginning. And I think another thing for me is just, work with people you want to work with. Obviously we all have to pay our rent and get, groceries and do everything. But I think, for me with the project, if I'm not stoked about it, I shouldn't do it, and not looking at projects like a stepping stone in order to get to a certain level in my career. I think where I found my success have been the projects that have I've been ultimately so passionate about. So then I work, you know, at 110%. So just really being cognizant of, you know, what you're doing, how you're doing it, and hiring the people who are better at their jobs than you are. So, yeah.
And there's so many, like, you know, mistakes that are there. It's a minefield. And, you know, my suggestion is just to go make the mistakes, get started tomorrow, you know, and look to great people that you can work with, develop your team, and you're going to define yourself and your company and your brand by how you interact with those problems. And so, you know, whether that's a payment issue on a client side, it's just like, you never know when that's going to happen. It could happen with the biggest name. It could happen with, you know, the smallest client that you're starting out with. But if you have a good team and an understanding of, you know, how you're going to approach the problems, you're going to define that. And so those first, you know, 2-3 years, you're going to make all the mistakes, and that's okay. That's the process, because you're going to develop your team through that. You're going to be like, you're going to reach out and be like, I've got two investors, and I've got, you know, 2 projects, and you're going to go to Jennifer. You're like, oh my God, what do I do? Okay, don't do that anymore. Oh, okay, thanks. And so you then say, okay, great. Or like, you know, you're starting out, you know, a C Corp, and you go to Chris. You're like, oh, I started a C Corp. He's gonna be like, don't do that. Go and amend it to an S Corp. And so you're going to make the mistakes, and that's okay. You know, and if you do, reach out to smart people that you know and people that you respect in the industry to ask their advice. I give it constantly, and I'm always, you know, helping those younger filmmakers out, because we know how it is and how it was. And so we're very sympathetic to the plight, and it's all about creation and working with a great team.
And I think Chris would agree with me on, I don't care if they're your best friend. I don't care if they're your husband. Everything needs to be in writing.
Oh my God, yes.
Everything.
Yes.
Right.
It's tough.
It is surprising how relationships can sometimes change when money actually starts coming in, when you get that high quality problem.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I always tell my clients, I'm like, if you want to open a business with them, pretend like you're marrying them, because it's kind of similar.
For real. The list of stuff that we could share is like probably endless in this topic. I want to get as many of these final questions as I can, guys. So let's do the quick answers. Did anybody on the panel create a business plan prior to forming your production company? And what was the most revealing thing about that process? I did not.
I did. I did.
I made a loose plan. I think my biggest thing for me was the amount of time that I thought it would take for me to find success. That is, you can't determine that for sure. I think you can determine certain ROIs with certain projects, but I think what was really missing in my business plan was how long things can take. You know, there's a show I pitched my first year of my production company that just got greenlit now, and it's been 4 years. So that trajectory is kind of off. But I think a business plan really helps you, because it helps solidifies why you want to start a production company, and, you know, kind of figuring out the ins and outs of what are required.
And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but you have to create a business plan in a sense, nothing, you know, with pictures or anything like that. But if you're, you know, incorporating, you have to create a plan of, these are the people that are in it, and, you know, these are the things that we're going to be doing.
Well, you need to know very basic information as far as the legal requirements go, like who is going to be the contact person for the company and who's the agent for service of process. But if in the context of fundraising, which ultimately you're probably going to be doing, then all that business plan like information is going to be included in the private placement memorandum that you give to investors to explain to them, well, indie film is a very risky business, but here's why we think we're the film that's really going to break big, and so on.
I think for films, business plans are a good idea, because you learn very quickly if you don't know who your audience is.
Yeah.
So then you're suddenly like, oh, who is going to watch this movie?
I guess you could relate that to the production company as well. Like, if you really want to you want to make sure you have an idea of who you are, what your values are, what you will put up with, what you won't put up with, what your dreams are. That's a great reason right there, just to put a little deck together for your production company. Moving on. Tyler says, do you have any regrets? I'm sure we have lots. But before
It's another hour.
It's a weekly podcast.
Yeah, it's like, where do we start? Do you have time? Do you recommend that someone creates from Carrie, do you recommend that someone creates an LLC for a narrative feature film before the funding is in place? Or do you wait until after the funding is in place? I would say before, yes?
Before. Yeah.
Because you want to lay out how people are getting paid and such before
And the contracts should be with the LLC, right, Chris? And I mean, certainly then you're aware of your format from your operating agreement, how they're going to be divided and everything else, right?
And it's good optics for investors who want to know that you're serious, that you can show them some legal documentation.
Yeah.
So Sonia had a follow-up question to the filing unemployment. If we,
wait, let me say something about an LLC too. If you open an LLC in the state of California, do not forget that you have to pay $800 a year. Everybody forgets, they don't do it. And if you want to do the S Corp and get the exemption there, then you need to file that paperwork as soon as you open the company. So file it's form 2553, I think. I'd have to look it up immediately, but the election to file as an S Corp. Lawyers, no offense, Chris, often forget that. And so after, a year and a half later, I end up with, but I thought I was an S Corp. So just make sure that you do that.
The one thing about Chris is he's actually really anal about that. And I'm like, really? There's another form?
You're doing that lately, yeah.
That's an awesome
Good job, Chris.
And on that note, even if you make $0 for your LLC, you're still paying $800 a year. Yep. So Sonia's follow-up question is, if we can't hire freelancers at 1099s, and how should we hire them? What is the proper and safe way to do it? I mean, the only choice is a W-2. I mean, you're paying taxes for them.
Payroll company, whatever you're doing. If you're talking about feature films, whatever you're doing for SAG, you've got to run that through payroll, run your crew through it too. And you can ask that most payroll companies will give you some kind of estimate.
And then for those of us with scripts, can you talk generally about the pros, cons of making a movie via your own production company versus selling or partnering to get it made? Love to hear about it from all perspectives. We don't have time to dig deep into this. So if you guys have 1 or 2 points about doing it through your own production company or just partnering or selling it.
I think those are very different. If you're looking to make money, the best way to do that, in my opinion, is to sell it or to try to option it. If you're looking to see it on the screen, then you might want to do it yourself. But those are very, very different paths. You kind of have to decide, in my opinion.
And the minute you partner with somebody or sell it, goodbye any creative say. Like if you're the writer of the project, you're most likely going to, even if they say on paper, you get, the say. Director is going to have the say, the producers are going to have the say, the editor's going to have, everybody's going to have more say.
The new writers that they hire to rewrite it for you are going to have the say.
The director does their pass on it. It's just, I think most of us, that's why we do our own projects. We produce our own projects because we want to maintain that creative control, because it's not because it's easier. It's because we're going to maintain control. Moving on really quick. So I'm going to leave that one for last. So you mentioned you mentioned networking is critical to get projects off the ground. Any other insights on advice for how or when to do it post-COVID world? What have you guys had success doing to get your networking on?
I've actually done almost every morning through this quarantine isolation. I've had a cup of coffee or tea or something with someone I respect and admire over Zoom. So Zoom, FaceTime, Skype, whatever works for you, Facebook, and just to really connect. And be like, hey, what are you working on? This is, I'd really would like to work with you, or trying to find those people that either I've had on my social media list that, I've been following for a while. Their projects are really cool. Reach out. Like everyone's in the exact same position. We all want to work. We all want to make our own work. So find a way to work together. And then other people who I've never met, I send them a quick email and be like, hey, I'd love to connect. I love X, Y, and Z, or I love, whatever it is that they do. And find a genuine compliment within there. And then that's a way to create a connection. And hopefully that will turn into
shared work. Obviously, the shared work is something that's, you have time for it right now. And that's what's been great about this is a friend of mine said, Bailey, I see you in such a different way now because I've been seeing your work and I've had the time to see your work. And he's like, this is like sitting around a big giant campfire together, and we're looking at, telling stories and examining each other's stories with the patients that, we'd hope to be received by, because, the day to day outside of the COVID crisis has been, just too blurry. Like I loved Jennifer's film, Quality Problems. And I remember I just kind of when it came out, I was just like, I caught wind of it and I sort of watched it and I was just like, oh yeah. And then but there's just like, oh, I'm going to be on a panel with Jennifer. Great. I was like, I should rewatch that. It seems so good. And I rewatched it and I'm like, it's such a great film. It is such a great film. It's a fantastic film. And it's it's a very sit around the campfire and tell stories type of thing. So this is
I think it always goes back to using your social media using your social media properly. That's how I get most of my work. And here's a fun story so Chris and I made a movie called The Breakout of Rock Opera that went to Dances with Films. The same year, Bailey had a film at Dances with Films. Bailey and I met at the after party, the final party. We exchanged 10 words? Hello, great film, good to see you.
But I like the film. That's the thing. It's like, I really like the film, and I key in on that. I key on what I like.
But beyond that, though, we've stayed in touch over social media. I see your work, you see my work, we see each other's working, but we're both directors, so it's not like we would hire each other. But he also sees that I'm a musical director. And then one day he has a thing come up that he doesn't want to direct, but he thinks, well, Jen's a musical director, so he calls me. So I think that I get so much work through my social media and networking that way because I'm an introvert. I don't like to go out of my house. This panel here is great because I don't have to leave.
Amen.
And I think that's sort of a lot of, I think social media can change your life if you use it properly. But you got to, I guess, get out and meet the people too. And you got to have the good work, like you said, Bailey. Before I get to our final question, some filmmakers think that a one-day insurance policy is enough coverage for a quick shoot, or that they can use or borrow someone else's policy. What do you guys think? Now be careful with the language here.
For the production, yes, you can get through a production. I think what comes next is, errors and omission, et cetera, when you're going into the distribution side of things. Then you get into it like another policy. So you can get by with just doing, a short film. And then once that short film maybe gets picked up, then you can go into another policy.
And the thing is, you're co-producing. That's the thing. You're bringing on a co-producer who has a policy already. You're not buying insurance from them. They have to be, the paperwork legally has to be there. You are a co-producer, you are accredited, and then you can, umbrella insurance, or give them insurance. What were you going to say, Jennifer?
I was going to say a lot of equipment houses have gotten wind of that kind of, that's why I was saying the whole day play, when people say, can I buy your insurance? And I was like, well, it's not that simple, because the equipment houses are starting to learn, you've got to have the same, everything's got to match.
Yes.
And then if I don't have paperwork on my side that matches you, right, Chris, it gets a little ugly.
It's very risky for the person who's covering you, because they're putting their name on the contract for the gear. And then they're putting so basically they have to have some kind of trust, and it's risky. Okay, guys, I want to give our final question. I think this is a great question that came from the audience to wrap us up. What are the top 5 action items? And we could come together as a group for this. What are the top 5 action items that we recommend people to do now during lockdown if they're considering creating their own production company? What can they go out and do today to get moving?
A business plan, figure out why you want to be a producer, or figure out why you want to be a producer or have a production company, make that business plan, make those connections, and try and build maybe a little bit of capital, but also like creative capital. Like, do you have those scripts that you already want to produce? Kind of start laying the groundwork to have those projects that once you are able to film, you can start.
What else? I think you could start reaching out to people you want to work with. Mm-hmm. Whether it's if you want to bring on music clients, start networking with maybe record executives, or you'll be surprised how much the labels hold control over where their clients go. And Bailey, you could probably talk more to that, on where their clients go to get their videos made.
Yeah, I think having, again, the cold calling and doing that sort of type of work is super necessary, and this is a great time for it. But also have work that you can show. And I think that's the great part about being ready at this point to make a company is you probably have shot a few things, and you probably have a lot of things in the can that you can say, hey, I can do this, and I can bring something to your clients or to, your next project. And so when you actually get a response, when you're trolling Twitter and you find their handle and they respond, you got to have something cool. Yeah. You have to have something that not just cool, but also that makes sense for them. And I think Mariah spoke to this. Something that makes sense for them. Like if I'm an executive at BMW, like, and you're showing me like, a food placement type of thing, like, oh great, that was a nice, Pepsi shot or something. I don't care about it as much. But if you show me something really cool that you did in car, or, it has to make sense for who you're reaching out to. And I think that we like to break things down into genre. And I think that's very important to selling yourself and branding yourself, is understanding what genre and what it is that you do well. And what you can offer people. And so when you look at those components and that service process, I think that informs, okay, while I'm going through my business plan, which I think is a great idea as a roadmap, that you're going to be like, okay, great. We are going to really capitalize and focus in on lifestyle, urban, or what have you. You're going to define yourself. What do we have? What do we have? Okay, we have that great video with this person, and oh yeah, that music video really took off. This is gonna be fantastic. So that when we do reach out to, and you develop that list, you can start picking off, and they're gonna be, oh yeah, I saw that music video, or I really like the work that you've been doing.
So possibly action 3 step then is, so action 1 step is your short answer, Mariah, was making, what would you say?
Business plan, right?
Business plan.
Okay, number 1, business plan, because that focuses you, which also makes you see which kind of clients you want. Number 2 is reaching out to those clients blindly. Number 3 is going through all of your work and making reels and samples, making sure only the best stuff is on the web and it's polished. And believe it, and like Bailey said, it doesn't matter if you have a cool spot that is gorgeous and amazing and beautiful. If it doesn't look like what they want, they don't care. They don't have imagination. So we need 2 more. Chris, Jennifer, you have anything to add?
I don't think it's ever really too early to start reaching out to professionals. And I don't mean this for the sake of, making legal fees. I tend to give a lot of free advice and an initial call or something that before I actually start drafting documents. I know I shouldn't say that, but.
No, I know.
Yeah.
So do I.
So find maybe a lawyer and a tax person that you like, that you vibe with, and that you can call on when you need them, if not now. And then maybe 5 is just, what's an actionable item besides, just go do it.
Well, I think that might very well be it. Like, go do the thing. Like, if that's what you want to do and you've taken these steps, then jump with both feet in. I think that's a huge thing. If you're prepared, and no one really does anything before they're 100% ready. But, I think go do the thing. If you're ready to go do it and you have those steps in place and you are ready to take the leap, go, either form your LLC or your S Corp, or you're, in a different country, incorporate or register, and go do it. Now's the time.
Talk to your network too. Talk to your network. Don't underestimate the people that you've already been working with or you went to school with or whoever, because you just never, ever know, actually.
I love this quote that I heard recently: network your own network. It is so fertile.
True. Right.
Okay. We could go on and on and on, I know, but I want to move on to letting our audience know who our film winners are. Will you panelists stick around and cheer them on with me as we announce? Thank you. So for those of you who don't know, Blackmagic Collective, we did a Safer at Home Film Festival. It ran for like 2 months. We basically said, you have to be at home. You can't use outside help. This is like the bare bones, just be creative in your own safe space. Awesome. If you went outside, if you had extra help, if we knew there was a big budget, we were like, it doesn't qualify, you're disqualified, okay? That said, people got so creative that there was such a fight at the end over who should be number 1 or number 2 that we had to send out the top 2 films to people outside in our networks without any context, just which one did you enjoy watching more, to pick our final winner, because you guys were so creative. So here we go. Drum roll. Thank you. The winner for Best Writing, who's going to win a seat of Final Draft 11, thank you, Final Draft, for that, is a film called Willie in the Sky. It'll be on our website, so you guys can see that after this panel here. Okay, honorable mentions. 2 that were so close to winning. One of these was in that fight. I won't tell you which one. Our 2 honorable mentions are The Good Stuff, which was super cute, and I will say my personal favorite is Our New Cat, who's also an honorable mention. So fun and adorable, and I just loved it. But here we go. I wish I had sound effects, because I feel like we need music and a drum roll. The best.
That's all I got.
Chris.
By the way, those 2 honorable mentions will both get a seat at DaVinci Resolve Studio, which is great. Ooh. You should look at that. It's collaboration extraordinaire. The best film that will get a seat at DaVinci Resolve Studio and will get 500 buckaroos is. I'm like, everybody waiting for it? Are you waiting for it? I hope they're here. Life Behind Bars, writer-director AJ Bishop, writer-star Sione Elise. And thank you guys so much for submitting and being part of this. Thank you, panelists, for your time. And we are going to leave you with the feature film. Tune in, make sure though, before we leave you with not the feature film, sorry, the short film. Tune in sign up for our newsletter because we're going to have more contests. Next month, we're going to have a pitching your project panel. So sign up for the newsletter so you're alerted. Like our Facebook page, follow the Instagram. You'll see all the films. You'll be in the know. And here you go, Life Behind Bars.
It was April, just after Fool's Day to be exact. One of those days where the mind wanders while the hands keep themselves busy. Like any other day, really. But this was the 10th day. Or the 11th. Or was it the 75th? No matter. Each day the same as the last, all blurring together since my gig at the local watering hole shuttered its windows, and I moved back in with my parents. Tending bar was never something I thought would last long term, just a side hustle really, a way to fill this endless void and make a quick buck. It wasn't until that day in April I realized. Perhaps it was I who was the fool. During a crisis, most young ladies would love to be home with their families. The catch is, bartending is the only thing they seem to love about me. Happy hour starts earlier and earlier these days. I wonder, if I left, would they even notice? Look at them, exhausting my talents, using me, milking me dry. It wasn't always like this. I had prospects, a plan for my future. I would never have expected to be cooped up at home, trapped in a never-ending two-person Friday night rush. I don't know what will kill me first, the virus or their unquenchable thirst. I'm not sure which one I prefer. These days it seems my mind is engulfed by juices and mixers, liquor and liqueurs. The only garnish I yearn for is freedom. It's a perfect old-fashioned. And yet the taste disgusts me now. I need to cleanse my palate. Bring me a rich brulee, a savory confit. I'd even be happy with a fresh tartare. This life is awful. I don't want to be used anymore. If only they could see me as more than a mixologist. But they can never, will never know that my true passion is to become a world-renowned chef.
You can cook? That's great.